What are subtle green flags at a job interview that say working here would rock? When you come into the office and see people casually talking and laughing about something work related. Bonus points if one of them is the interviewer. It's pretty cool when you see an office where people genuinely like each other. I'm in the software industry and a lot of companies are kind of sweatshops. I like to schedule people to interview in the afternoon so when their interview ends at 5 o'clock they can see people packing up and going home at the end of their day. During the interview for my current job, I saw people packing up and leaving around 3:34. I immediately thought, oh, now I really want this job. When the interviewer is genuinely excited about what the company does. I walked into the interview for my current job expecting it to use it as practice for my next interview. I met the CEO at a coffee shop and he was so passionate about the company he got me hooked. I've been doing this almost 3 years now and I've never enjoyed a job more. Although that could be a sign of an MLM. A great question to ask in interviews is, what do you like about working here? It frequently catches the interviewer off guard and you can learn a ton from their reaction. It's usually pretty easy to tell whether they're being sincere and there's things they enjoy or if the workplace actually sucks. Restaurant worker here. The first green flag is when I have confirmed that I will get the hours I need to survive, and the boss immediately respects my hour restrictions. If they go, I will see that just means you might get 20 hours a week or we'll make you work like a dog until you burn out. For my job interview at a restaurant, on the way in a guy was sweeping the front walk. We gave each other a big smile. That was the manager just kinda helping the place look a bit better while he was waiting for me. It was a good job. I've had 2 interviews this week. Not one asked me the stereotypical questions. More so my qualifications, how to handle certain situations. The interviewers today and I went on a sidetrack talking about early 2000s pop punk, dog training and cooking. The main interviewee joked she'd take me in right now. It was a fun interview, all smiles, laid back but still professional. My first interview wasn't as fun but relaxed and good communication. He also let me know after questions things like, that's exactly it. Oh, I like that. That's the answer I give. I landed the first one. I feel great about today's. Point is, I didn't feel pressured or like I was actually being judged. Smiles and laughs in an interview are the largest green flag you can imagine. At least one of the people interviewing you will be your direct manager, and they seem cool. Also, they've been there for years. People overlook this a lot, I think. Big companies usually have a separate recruiting department than where you will actually be working, so your manager never interviews you. I don't actually have the job yet, but I'm fixing to start work as an outbound salesman at a staffing agency. Because I'm low on cash, I asked to be staffed as a temp with one of the factories we contract with in the meantime. Can't start for a couple months because of internal politics. Started off great, but lo and behold, working in a factory didn't mesh well with my chronic back pain. I made it a week because I was afraid quitting the factory would jeopardize my job offer from the agency, but it really was getting unbearable. It eventually got too painful, and knowing that quitting on short notice would leave them in a really bad position, they would have needed to find a new employee to work at the factory before the end of the day, 1 hour later, and asked that they work on finding a replacement for me, but insisted that I stay until they find someone else so as to not cause any problems. Rather than taking me up on my offer, the head of the agency and my future boss insisted that I stop working there immediately, expressed guilt that I had been afraid to call sooner, and stayed an hour late to find me a reassignment and place a new temp at the factory. Needless to say, that really bolstered my faith in the company, and I'm really excited to start working for them. He could have been concerned about having to pay workers' comp since you might have hurt yourself worse while working for them. I walked in, and while shopping the owner seemed impressed by my knowledge on the subject when I identified an old surplus rifle he didn't recognize, and we ended up beasing for a few hours. My next visit I was offered a job. Best job I have had in my life. Kinda how I got my current job. B said with the store director for a bit, then asked if he was hiring. My future boss correctly pronounced my name when picking me up in the lobby. Her support, mentorship, and care for growth and happiness still are the reason I'm with the company 7 years later. TBF. Rat isn't that hard to pronounce. When I interviewed after I got laid off, I asked how they handled the pandemic. It shows a lot about the type of company they are and how they view their employees. It says so much. My old boss did some really crappy things to employees during the beginning of the pandemic. Probably still is, I don't know, and I told myself, I'm going to remember this and use it as motivation to finally leave the job when the pandemic is over. Turns out I got a new job anyway, but I would never have been able to forget that and keep working there. In the last interview of my current job, they were all joking and having a great time with me as well as one another. I could tell they were more interested in how I would fit in with the culture after they figured out I was qualified. They were very candid about the technical struggles of the company itself, but all of them had beaming looks in their eyes when they discussed benefits and other employee interactions. Not going to lie, they didn't lie at all about the systems being trash. But the culture and openness is what is keeping me there. They also pay pretty freaking fat compared to the other companies around me. We all try our best with what we have, and that's what keeps us all going. Since starting, only one person in my immediate office area has left for another company, and there have been many new job additions. The application process is pretty normal and respectful of your time. I send your resume and brief cover letter and references, as opposed to those 7-hour personality quizzes. They don't seem too quick to want to hire you on the spot. There's no major demographic difference between non-customer facing and customer facing positions. But like if you go in and everyone you see in the public sales areas is white and everyone in production is Hispanic, that's a little iffy. Look at people's faces. People can bull you all day long, but there are often easy to read facial expressions that tell the real story. For a second I read that as look at people's faces. Coming from a childcare perspective, how much art is on the walls? If there's a lot of art and with plenty of style variation, it shows me the kids are engaging well with the adults and the staff is creating a good environment for them to explore. Same thing with how many books are on the shelves. This is a good measure of any place. High payments without the workers looking like overused rags. People look happy. Always check the area where you plan to work. It's easy to spot the red flags with some attention. Literally had an interviewing manager tell me, I don't care if you show up in a bathrobe with a toothbrush hanging out of your mouth. If you can get the job done and your skills are what you say, then we're all good. Also noticed someone with a glass of wine on their desk on my way out. It was Friday afternoon, and this was considered perfectly fine. One of the best jobs I've had. This is great, because I just had an interview a couple days ago that went really well. I showed up a few minutes early, before the boss unlocked the doors, and some guy clearly on crack came along and banged on the door, turned around to look at me, and said he's not a nice guy and then stalked off. I thought it was kind of weird, so I mentioned it to the boss. He said it was most likely the same guy he had chased off with a hammer the previous night. He explained that the guy came in clearly tweaking and was being creepy, threatening to the staff. Obviously the creepy guy isn't the green flag, but the fact that the owner is willing to protect the staff instead of just placating problem customers was a huge plus in my book. Anyway, I start in February. I like that you want your boss to chase off drug addicts with hammers. I have a few thoughts on this. Break policy. Are breaks based on the needs of the company or the needs of the employee? Salary transparency. Are you going to make as much as someone in the same position who was recently hired? Does the company hide who much people make? Employee retention. A few posts have mentioned you want a company with a balanced turnover rate, but I feel there is a lot to be said if a majority of employees have been with the company for 20+ years or so. For example, interviewing folks for a position next week. Saw that someone emailed me a question. I'll respond at 8:30 on Monday, so they see that we don't respond to emails on our phone over the weekend. That's your time, not company time. For me, it was when my manager just chatted with me instead of interviewing. I mean, he did interview, but it wasn't formal. It was nice and relaxed, and he wanted to get a sense of who I was in the moment rather than rigid standard questions. I got asked once if I was a serious person, and laughed, and he told me that was the first time. Well, no crap. You've been asking me interview questions for 30 minutes. My favorite company, I worked for the president of the co, was my last interview, and all we talked about was the Pixies concert the week before. After getting the job, I asked him later why he didn't really interview me, and he said everyone before me interviewed me. He just wanted to see if I was the type of person he could go to lunch with. Spent 13 years with them. Prompt communication during the scheduling and interview process. They get back to you quickly after each response and seem genuinely interested in talking to you. Nothing worse than someone who takes days to respond, or even just ghosts you halfway through. When I was walking through the office to the HR office, I could see many bottles of Fireball on people's desks. To be fair, I wasn't sure if that was a green light or a red light, until someone who worked there told me that they were left over from the company's weekly happy hour. So, depending on the company, that could definitely be a red flag. And as someone who doesn't drink, I would be right back out the door. Haha. Their demeanor will say a lot. Last place I interviewed, my boss kept telling jokes and overall had a lovely attitude for how maniacal our workspace can get usually is. I tend to be very nervous and intimidated by interviewers, but my boss had such a good attitude it was hard to feel uncomfortable. I went into the interview a total stiff, thinking in the back of my mind how serious I had to be taken to meet expectations, etc. But my boss broke me out of my shell and we were hitting it off as friends, whilst still maintaining the she's the boss, I'm the employee demeanor. She was gauging my drive more than my abilities, which I thought was awesome. She seemed to really enjoy her role, and working for her the last 4 years I can definitely see that she loves it and can say that I love my role as well. This one wasn't a traditional interview, but when I went to interview with parents about a nannying gig, the mom was so stoic that it made me nervous. I did, however, have a long conversation with the kids about what it would be like to turn into a frog. Turns out, she let the youngest decide who she wanted to spend her days with, and didn't want to influence her decision. A few days later, the 3-year-old called to say I was hired, almost 7 years later, and it's the best job I've ever had. The girl who hired me is one of my favorite people in the world and their family has become my own. I know I frick around and comment sometimes. Who doesn't like to troll a bit sometimes? But this is so freaking cute. Coming from a social work perspective, meeting genuine human beings. I got my current job a couple years ago now. I was on my 3rd interview with one agency who has an insanely long, in-depth hiring process. I don't think I breathed during a single one of those interviews. I sat there in pantsuits talking across desks to other people in pantsuits. They went through formal questions and scenarios. Everything there was very business-wise, and at the time so was I. And then I went to interview with the company I'm now at. The director was wearing a cute dress, curled up in the chair next to me, grabbed a blanket cause she was chilly, chatted, doodled on my resume as we talked, and was totally at ease. And suddenly I was too. She asked about my passions, my goals, my ideal job position. She told me about how she had spent a therapy session that day laying outside with a kid looking at clouds. She made me feel comfortable and showed me that she really cared about what she does and that she does it for the right reasons. The 3-interview job did offer me a position, paid mileage, my own work phone, educational benefits to get my master's degree, and a nice salary. I turned it down, and I'm grateful that I did, because I've grown so much as a clinician and a person. I feel like I'm able to be authentic and have a really good rapport with my clients. No suits, no pressure, just real humans empathizing and connecting with other real humans. And honestly, I have yet to see another agency in the area that does what we do as well as we do it. They say family is more important than work. They say work-life balance is a high priority. They recognize people for accomplishments. I personally find those phrases meaningless. They are things interviewers might say regardless of their actual culture. See also, we work hard and play hard. I love this question. Review to see if they are a B corporation. Ask the interviewer about their own path and longevity with the company. Take a look at the company's growth over time and yes, life-work balance and low turnover. Software developer here. Had an interview where I was asked to write a Spring Boot system to solve a super simple problem. Interviewer then asked me questions about my approach and collaborated with me by giving suggestions. Basically told me I would learn a lot from the job and that they cared more about how I thought than what I knew. I got the job and certainly have learned a lot. I'm an engineer, So when I meet people at a prospective company that are clearly passionate about their tech and geek out over what they're doing, that's the sort of enthusiasm I want to be surrounded by. Bonus points if they have nerdy collectibles or other indications that it's not all business. I've worked at 3 companies in my line of work, and for the last 2 interviews I asked the interviewer, boss man, not HR, how many of the guys' names he knew. The last job the guy said most of them. I had a crap time there and left in 3 months. My current job, the guy said he knew everyone. I've been here 8 months so far and it's the most laid back place. Really great environment, and they care about the employees. I had an interview at a massage place this week. The assistant manager had blue hair. I was no longer concerned about having tattoos and piercings or looking unprofessional. I'd still keep it all covered if they ask though. If they volunteer some downsides, unprompted, in an interview, say you would ask what's the culture like and they give you 2 positives and 1 negative point, that is, but we are quite corporate in some regards and bureaucracy is a thing here. It shows that they aren't open enough to acknowledge that not everything is perfect, it never is, and they value you enough to be honest with you so you can make an informed choice, just like they are making as an employer about you. It makes sense cause it's better that the candidate makes an informed decision and then stays with the company. Getting someone who'll soon be disappointed and leave is more work for the hiring team and an issue for client relationship. From experience with bad workplaces and with my current workplace that I adore, if the staff have inside jokes, it's probably a good sign. I've worked at places where everyone is cordial, but there's some underlying cattiness that's hard to see until you're actually there for a while. Where I am at now, we have inside jokes. My co-worker that I carpool with is a retired art teacher, and a very sweet and gentle lady, but I can also text my boss and say we need to post bail for co-worker. She delivered that order to the police station like you asked, but she also flipped them off and cussed them out before pulling a U-turn, a wheelie, running into a fire hydrant and catching air off the subsequent explosion of water. An actual text I sent him once. He responded with a gif, where the person was shocked. Or they tease me and joke about how everything is Butterfly's fault. I could have been sick that day, but he'll hear it later when something went wrong how I was the one to blame. We joke about bribing the boss with candy, cause of his sweet tooth, only rivaled by my own. When I was interviewing for my current position I told my supervisor that my wife was about to have a baby so I will need to miss work occasionally for doctor's appointments and obviously the birth. His response was family is always first. The job will always be here when I get back the next day. They told me what they did when the pandemic first hit. People who were out of training were given PTO until they got everyone situated to work from home. There were people in training who they couldn't keep in the office to keep training because of state laws, but they didn't know how to do the job so they couldn't send them home either. They fired them so they would qualify for unemployment and told them they would rehire them as soon as they could start training in office again. Many decided not to come back cause they were making more off unemployment. There was a department of like 3 people whose jobs were basically completely useless because we weren't working in the office anymore. So they gave them jobs that usually paid $3 an hour less than what they were making and let them keep their pay until they could be placed back in their original positions. While you're waiting in reception for your interviewer to come get you, just looking at the body language and demeanor of the people walking through can tell you a lot. I want to go the opposite. My company is ridiculous about hiring people. They are super critical, and the onboarding process is long. So we are hiring temps now. Faster to hire. It's a warehouse job. Pay is decent, not great, but a question my boss will ask is what is your dream job? Some of these guys can't even answer. One dude legit said I just want to win the lottery. Today a very young kid came in today well dressed. Very nice. My boss asked him. He said I want to be a marriage counselor. It's my passion. Boss said that may have been his favorite interview ever. Hope we hire this kid and can get him some money to pursue his passion. The coffee machine or lack of it. I don't even drink coffee, but a fancy machine out in the open in a clear welcoming area suggests the company wants the employees to feel good while working. A dark kitchenette in the middle of nowhere with canned instant shows just how much they're willing to invest in your well-being. A vending machine means they won't even spring for the kettle, sink and canned stuff. Coming from a childcare perspective. How much art is on the walls? If there's a lot of art and with plenty of style variation, it shows me the kids are engaging well with the adults and the staff is creating a good environment for them to explore. Same thing with how many books are on the shelves. But too much free food means they want you to stay late and never leave. My boss at my current job had a one-on-one phone interview with me before bringing me into the office. Over the phone he asked me about my desired salary and I gave him a number. At the technical interview things were going well, and he pulled me aside before we wrapped up. He told me that the salary number that I had asked for was too low for the amount of experience that I had, and that he needed his team to be more worried about their work than they were about their finances. That night I got the offer in my inbox, and it was more than 20% over what I had requested. I love my job, but I'm loyal to my boss. Working for people that genuinely give a crap about you is the greenest flag I can imagine. A few green flags. I had gone in as a customer a few times before ever seeing the job posting and always had a good experience. For my interview, I met the HR manager at a Starbucks and she insisted I get a fancy drink if that's what I wanted. It made me feel like this wasn't a cheap company, and they even wanted their interviewees to feel good. We ended up chatting about Chrissy Teigen and I'm still here 5 years later. The other great thing is that they are a local company with 5 locations, but each location is managed by someone from the original team at the first location. Every time the owners chose to expand, they essentially gave a store to one of their top employees. Nice to see that loyalty is rewarded and experience is valued. I hated working at places where the managers were outside hires who had never done the job. A solid mix of experience within the company. The opposite version red flag would be the employee mix is all either ancient with 20 years experience or early 20s with 1 or 2 years of experience. Just had a job interview today. Chief was showing me around. Small clinic, and everybody greeted me very warm, saying welcome here with a big smile. Seemed like a huge green flag. Smiles are a green flag. I once interviewed for a job and someone far away shook their head with wide eyes. Red flag. In food service, a very subtle green flag I like to see is employees dancing or singing along to the music being played in the bar taproom restaurant. When the vacancy is created by someone getting an internal promotion, that's a great sign that the company fosters talent and development. Also, having a modest amount of sound walking through the floor and or open array of workspaces might mean that teamwork is a huge focus. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.